Hi, this is video 2 in the playlist where we're looking at the Edexcel Foundation, and it's the papers from the June 2018 series. In the last video we completed to question number 13, so in this video we're going to start from question number 14. I'm going to aim for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. Please do stop the video, have a go at each of the questions and then compare your solutions. Okay, so let's move on then to question number 14. Question number 14, we've got Gary, Harry and Isabel, who are all earning the same monthly salary, and we're being asked to work out who saves the most of their salary for each of the month, for each month. Okay, so let's have a look first at Gavin. Okay, now I think one of these types of questions, the easiest thing is to look at a monthly salary, which just makes your calculations a little bit easier to do. So I'm actually going to say that Gavin, Harry and Isabel all earn £100 a month. Okay, because if they earn £100 a month, it then gives me the ability to be able to work out things like percentages and fractions fairly easily. So let's have a look first at Gavin, and what we're told is that Gavin saves 28%. Well, 28% of £100 is going to be £28. So Gavin saves £28 of his monthly salary. Okay, Harry spends 3/4 of his salary and saves the rest. Well, if he saves, he spends 3/4, he's going to save 1/4. So Harry, we have 1/4. Okay, well 1/4 of 100 is going to be 25. So Harry saves £25. And then finally we've got Isabel. Okay, and Isabel is in a ratio of 3 to 7. So what we basically mean by that is that Isabel saves 3/10 of her salary, because 3 plus 7 is 10. So this will be 3/10 and this would be 7/10. Now this is the save and this is the spend, so she saves 3/10 of her salary. Well, 3/10 of 100 is going to be £30. So the answer to this particular question is that Isabel will save the most. Okay, hope that's okay for you. Let's move on then to question number 15. And it's a percentage question, so it's asking us to work out 15% of 160 grams. Well, this is a non-calculator paper, so you're going to have to work this out in the way that you work it out. For me personally, I would say that 10% of 160 equals 16. So therefore 5% is going to be half of that. So 5% is going to equal 8. So if I add those two together, I'm going to get 24. Okay, so therefore work out 15% of 160. Well, the answer to that would be 24. Okay, hope that's okay for you. Let's move on then to question number 16. Okay, we're about 3 minutes into the video. Please do have a go at this question by stopping it, working through it, and then compare your solutions. Okay, so the first part A is work out the value of P. Okay, well, with these sorts of questions, it's always useful to use brackets when you're putting in your values of X and Y. So we've got an equation which is P equals 4X plus 3Y. So if I write that with X is 5 and Y is minus 2, I'm going to get P equals 4 times 5 plus 3 times minus 2. Okay, and then it's a case of working those out, and in this particular case adding them together. So I've got 4 times 5 is 20. Now we're going to be a little bit careful of plus 3 times minus 2. Well, a plus times a minus is a minus, so that's going to be minus 6. So the answer to this particular question will be 14. So P is going to be 14. Okay, the next part of this, part B, is expand 4e brackets e plus 2. Okay, what I mean by that is that 4e is going to be multiplied by each of those two terms within the brackets. The first one is going to be this one. So 4e times e, well, that's going to be 4e squared. And then 4e times plus 2, well, 2 lots of 4 is 8, so it's going to be plus 8e. Okay, and that would be sufficient for this particular question. Next one is going to be part C, which is solve, and then we've got these brackets that we need to work with. So like we did before, we're going to expand those brackets. So 3 is multiplied by m, and we get 3m. And 3 is multiplied by minus 4, and we get minus 12. And that equals 21. Okay, now I need to find a way to get m on one side of the equation and the numbers on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 12 to both sides. If I add 12 to both sides, this and this go, and I get 3m. And then I've got 21 added to 12 is going to be 33. Well, that basically will tell me 3 lots of m. So to get 1 lot of m, I need to divide through by 3. So if I divide through by 3, I get m equals 11. So m would equal 11 for that particular question. Okay, hope that's okay. Let's move on then to question number 17. And this is really just a case of reading through. There's an awful lot of words on this particular question. And it's actually relatively straightforward, but you do need to read it really, really carefully. It says there's some chocolates in a box, and a quarter of the chocolates contain nuts. The rest of the chocolates do not contain nuts. Okay, so that means then that 3/4 of the chocolates do not contain nuts. Okay, write down the ratio. Okay, so if we can write it as nuts to not nuts. Okay, what we're saying is that we have 1/4 is nuts and 3/4 is not nuts. But that basically means that we've got 4 shares within this particular box of chocolates, of which 1 share is nuts and 3 shares is not nuts. Okay, so the ratio is going to be 1:3. Okay, it does take a little bit of thinking through, but hopefully that would work out okay for you. All right, let's move on then to question number 18. Now, question number 18 is a Venn diagram type question. You don't need to really write it all out as a Venn diagram, but it is useful to write out the numbers that A and B are referring to. So let's just have a look at that. So A, these little funny these brackets here mean basically the set of. So A is the set of multiples of 5 between 14 and 26. Okay, well, let's write those down. So what we mean is that A is equal to, funny little bracket there, the multiples of 5 between 14 and 26 are going to be 15, because that's a multiple of 5, 20 and 25. Oops. Okay, and that would be all of the elements within that particular set. Okay, let's have a look at B then. So B is the odd numbers between 14 and 26. We need to do exactly the same. Okay, so B is going to be the set of odd numbers between 14 and 26. Well, 14 is an even number, so we can't use that one, but we can use 15, 17, 19, 21, 23 and 25. Okay, and those are all the numbers that are in set B. And then it says list the members of A union B. So it's the numbers that appear in both sets. Okay, so if we write those out, we can see here that 15 appears in there. Okay, and also 17. Okay, and then we've got 19. We've got 20, we've got 21, we've got 23 or 25. So actually it appears in either A or B. Okay, so you can see here that I've got 15 in both. It happens to be in both, but it is part of the set that is A or B. Okay, And then I've got describe the members A and B. Well, they're the numbers that only appear in A and B. So if we go to our set, we've got 15 and 25, and they're the numbers, the odd multiples of between 5 between 14 and 26 that appear in A and in B. Okay, so that's going to be 15 and 25. If you're not sure about these kind of this kind of material, then please do have a look on the channel and on the playlist. There is quite a long playlist devoted to Venn diagrams, and that will give you quite a few more examples to look through. Okay, let's move on then to working with fractions. I'd say that fractions crops up such a lot with all of these papers, so it's well worthwhile having a good way of working with fractions. They're in pretty much every paper that I come across at the moment, particularly foundation level. Okay, so we've got two mixed numbers that we need to add together. The problem with it is that the two numbers have got different denominators. So one's 7 and one's 4. They both need to be the same, so I'm going to choose 28. So I'm going to rewrite 2 and 1/7 to 2 and something over 28. Well, what I've done is I've multiplied 7 by 4 to get to 28. So I need to multiply that number by 4 as well. So it's going to be 2 and 4/28. Okay, next bit is, again, I'm going to choose 28 again. So I've multiplied 4 by 7 to get to 28. So I multiply the top by 7. Okay, and then if I add those two together, I get 3 and 11/28, and that's the answer to this particular question. I'm very aware that people might create improper fractions and then go from there, and that's absolutely fine. This is just the way I do it, and it kind of works for me. We're going to be doing improper fractions, however, with the next part of the question, which is part B, because we've got a division. And the important thing also is that we need to create an answer in its simplest form. Okay, so let's just have a look at how we work with division. Well, 1 1/5 we need to change into an improper fraction. So what we do is we say 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So that's going to be 6/5, okay? And then with division of fractions, the technique is to multiply and flip. So I'm going to multiply this and then flip the second fraction to 4/3. Okay. If I then multiply that through, I get 6 times 4 is 24 and 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, so let's now convert that back to a mixed number, which is the first bit of the answer that they're looking for. So we're basically saying 24 divided by 15. Well, there is one lot of 15 in 24, and then we've got a remainder of 9 out of 15 left. Okay, that was sufficient to give you 1 mark. If you wanted then to get that other mark, we need to just reduce this 9/15 to its lowest form, which is divisible top by 3, which would be 3, and bottom by 3 as well, which would be 5. So that's going to be 1 3/5, and that would be the answer to that particular question. Okay, so we're about 13 minutes into the video. I'm going to aim for about another five minutes or so and see how we get on with that. 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, let's move on then to question number 20. Again, ratio does seem to be around a fair bit, so again, it's well worthwhile making sure that you've had some experience of working through some of these topics. And it says, in a village, number of houses, number of flats are in the ratio 7:4. So what we're saying is that houses to flats in the ratio of 7:4. Okay, and then it says the number of flats and number of bungalows are in the ratio 8:5. Okay, so flats to bungalows is 8:5. Okay, so the problem with this is we've got 4 flats here and 8 flats here, and actually it just make our life a little bit simpler if we can make these two numbers the same. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to multiply this by 2, and that becomes 8, and I'm going to multiply this by 2, and that becomes 14. So if I wanted to write houses to flats to bungalows, I could write that as houses, flats, bungalows, 14 to 8 to 5, okay? And that will help me to answer this particular question where they're saying there are 50 bungalows in the village. How many houses are there? Okay, well, if there's 50 bungalows, it means then that we've multiplied this by 10 to make that 50, okay? So we need to do the same with the others. 8 times 10 is going to be 80, and 14 times 10 is 140, okay? And that will answer this particular question, that there are 140 houses in the village, okay? So they do take a little bit of time working through, but mainly with these types of questions, you have to make sure that if you've got a common item, this particular case flats, you need to make sure that the numbers are the same. And once you've got those numbers to be the same, you can then just create something like that and use it to answer the question. Okay, let's move on then to question number 21, where Renee goes out and buys some sweets. Okay, so she buys 5 kilograms of sweets and she pays £10. Okay, that's all right, no? Okay, she puts all the sweets into bags. She puts 250 grams of sweets into each bag, and she sells each bag of sweets for 65p. Okay, so the first thing is that we need to look at how many bags she would actually be able to create. Okay, so she's got 5 kilograms of sweets, and each bag has 250 grams of sweets. Okay, so the way to work that out would be to say that actually I've got 5,000 grams, and I'm going to divide that by 250 grams. And what that'll do is tell me how many bags I can create. Okay, now you might have a different way of doing this. It kind of works for me to use equivalent fractions. So what I would be doing is I'd be saying, well, actually, I can knock off these zeros by dividing through by 10. I can also then divide through by 25, actually. If I divide through by 25, that becomes 1 at the bottom, and this actually becomes 20. Now you might have a slightly different method of doing that, but that would be my method, and I would end up with 20 bags of sweets. Okay, then Renee puts all the sweets into bags and she sells each bag of sweets for 65p. So she's got 20 of them. She's going to sell each of them for 65p. We need to work out how much money she actually makes. Okay, so 65 times 20. Again, you might use partitioning method or something slightly different. I'm just going to use this particular type of method where I can work out that actually she's got 1,300 pence income for these sweets. Now 1,300 pence isn't much help for me. I'm actually going to make that £13. Okay, so she's bought these sweets for £10 and she sells them for £13. Okay, so she bought for £10. She sells for £13. Okay, so her profit is actually £3. Okay, now the question is actually asking us to work out percentage profit. And this is where it does get a little bit tricky, but you'd probably be able to tell that actually it's going to work out at 30%. So if you wrote down 30%, that's perfectly fine. But just for the sake of completeness for these types of videos, I'm going to work out percentage profit. And the little formula to remember is difference divided by original, and that's multiplied by 100 to give you the percentage. Okay, so the fraction profit is going to be the difference, which is going to be 3. The original is going to be 10 multiplied by 100, and that will give me 30%. Okay, and that would be the answer to the question. If you wanted to show all of your working. Hopefully that's okay for you. So we're going to move on to question number 22. Hi, so on to question number 22. It says a cycle race across America is that. Part of the question, however, talks about in part A, and the key word here is estimate. Okay, so actually, even though we've got these much more precise measurements, we can look at each of these measurements and just come up with a number that will work relatively easy within the particular calculations that we need to do. So the first thing is that we've got a cycle race across America is that amount of miles. Well, I'm going to cut that down to 3,000 because then it'll help me with my calculation. In the same way that his average speed is 15.12, well, it's good enough to say that's going to be 15, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, so estimate how many days Juan will take to complete the race. Well, the first thing is I need to find out the distance he travels per day. Okay, so the formula I'm going to use is speed is distance divided by time. Now I know again some students will use these little triangles, that sort of thing. I tend to remember it just as a formula, but it won't matter if you draw a little triangle. So the speed is 15. Okay, the time he takes is 8 hours per day. And the distance is d, and that's what we're trying to work out. And the way we're going to do that is we multiply both sides by 8. I get d is 15 times 8, which is 120. So he actually travels 120 miles every day. Okay, so I now know that he's got 3,000 miles to go. So to work out the amount of days he's going to take, it's going to be 3,000 miles divided by 120 days. Okay, now like before, I tend to prefer working with fractions. It kind of works for me. However, you might choose to do this with some sort of long division. Okay, but if you look at the fraction itself, I can firstly get rid of these zeros. So I've got now 300 divided by 12. Now I do know that both 300 and 12 can be divided by 3, and it just makes my calculation a little bit easier. If I divide top and bottom by 3, I get 100 over 4. Okay, well, 100 divided by 4 is 25, and I happen to know that. So 25 days is how long he's going to take to complete the race. If you wanted to, you could do from there, you could do 4 into 100. So 4 into 10 is twice, and I've got 2 left over. 4 into 20 is going to be 25. So you will get the same answer, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. Then part B of the question says, one trains for the race. The average speed he can cycle at increases. It's now slightly faster. Okay, 16.27. How will this affect the answer? Well, he's going to take less time to complete the race because he's cycling faster. So I would just simply write he'll take less time to complete. Okay, and you can put cycling faster. Okay, I hope that's okay for you. I'm going to complete the video at this particular point. That's going to give you hopefully about an hour's worth of fairly focused revision, and then we'll start again from question number 23 in what will probably be the final video of this particular playlist. I hope that's okay for you. Please do add a comment below, have a look at the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you inside the next video.